Hey guys, it's Sarah Schneider with NourishLife.org. If you are new to the Nourish Mama, I am the creator and founder of NourishLife.org and this group. So today I wanted to talk about Nourishment Blueprint. There's a lot of new people on here. I use the word all the time, and I want to make sure that, or the term, it's two words, but I want to make sure that you guys understand what I'm referring to, because Nourishment Blueprint is a proprietary process that I have. It's a term that I created, or a process that I created, and I wanted to make sure that everybody really understood what it is, how it influences your life, and why it is so important. Hey, Pam, why it is so important to know what your nourishment blueprint is. So the reason that I created this was because, number one, I have a long history with IBS and stomach and digestive issues. I had my first colonoscopy at the age of 12, which is just ridiculous. And the findings were that I had inflammation in my gut. Not a lot, not enough to talk about, but enough to cause me discomfort. And when I talk about discomfort, I'm talking about major abdominal pain where I'm like doubled over, right? And the attending pediatric gastroenterologist at the time basically diagnosed me with CRAP, chronic reoccurring abdominal pain. And he thought that was quite amusing. I did not. And basically this was the diagnosis for anything that they could not explain. They didn't have an answer for. This was before the term IBS was even a term. And so this gastroenterologist with 14 years of medical training told a 12-year-old that they needed to figure out, he told me, he said, you just really need to figure out what foods work for you and what foods don't. I don't know what that is. And that was it. There was no referral to a nutritionist. It was just figure it out. And you're just gonna have to, figure out which combinations of foods don't work for you. Sometimes if you eat two foods at the same time, they're good by themselves, but they're not good together. And that was basically the information that I was given to help with my digestive issues. And so one of the things that I experienced throughout my lifetime was struggling not only with digestive issues, but struggling with inflammation and bloating and weight gain. And there were times where I would be able to lose it and then times where I would gain it back. I tried every diet under the sun, and some of them really worked. And I couldn't understand why some of them worked and then why they didn't. But the ones that did work typically were really hard to stick with, right? I knew the Atkins worked for me, but the thought and the idea of eating pounds and pounds of meat and cheese really grossed me out. I couldn't sustain that. And there were other diets that, worked for a little bit but didn't really work. I could never figure out exactly what was causing the issue. So it was in my early 20s that I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to do dieting anymore. I'm just going to quit. I'm not going to count calories. I'm not going to figure out what my macros are. I'm not going to, cut huge amounts of food groups out. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to figure out how to nourish my own body, right? I'm going to really figure out what works for me and what doesn't. Sage advice I took 10 years later. But at the same time, a 12-year-old doesn't know how to do that, right? It's still to this day, it kind of annoys me looking back on it. And that's what I hear about from my clients a lot of times. They'll go to the doctor. They will have every test under the sun. I just spoke with a lovely lady the other day, and she was telling me all of the different medical tests that have been run because she too has IBS, and every single time they come back and it's fine. But it's not fine. She's miserable, right? She's in so much discomfort on a day-to-day basis, and it's debilitating to the point where, she can't get to the office and feel comfortable about doing that because she never knows what's going to happen. You never know what's going to expect. So one of the things that I discovered when I was learning how to heal my body from the inside out and really nourishing myself and focusing on nourishment rather than weight loss was that I started, I guess accidentally, reducing the amount of foods that cause inflammation. I started really putting in a lot of foods that reduced inflammation. I started taking out a lot of foods that caused inflammation, and I noticed that my gut was starting to heal. I did some experimenting with different foods, and I realized that there were certain foods that didn't work for me. You take those out and the weight started dropping off. So I figured out that piece of it, right? And then I discovered that I was having a lot of problems with the mental stuff, right? So I had healed my gut. I would do all the things. I would do it really well for a while, and then I would binge because I was so deprived mentally. I was not there. I didn't like myself. I didn't love myself. I didn't love my body. I was very uncomfortable in my skin, even though I was a size 0, and I had healed all of this digestive stuff. I, eliminated my asthma. I did all these things, all the right things, but I was still miserable. So there was another component missing, and that was the head and the heart work. And so it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I realized this is it. This is the combination, and that's when I created the Nourishment Blueprint process. When I say Nourishment Blueprint, this is the process of understanding your unique combination of physical, psychological, and logistical needs. So logistical, I already touched on physical and psychological. Logistical means that everybody is in a different season of life. So for example, a mama who has 3 kids under the age of 5 is going to have completely different logistical needs than a mama who is an empty nester and works from home, right? So different logistical needs. The way you show up, the way you integrate this stuff into your life is going to be different. So the physical stuff is all about understanding which foods work for you, which foods don't, taking into consideration all of your health conditions, whether you have asthma, whether you have diabetes, whether you have heart issues, whether you have high cholesterol, high blood pressure. You have to account for all of these things. Somebody who has diabetes or blood sugar issues is going to have a completely different nourishment blueprint, right? They're going to have a completely different dietary requirements, right? Nutrient requirements than somebody who has high blood pressure. It's completely different. And we have to account for these things. A lot of my clients have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This means that they have a thyroid condition, right? They go to the doctor, they get the medication, they get Synthroid or whatever it is, and they realize that they're not seeing the progress that they want to see. They, start taking it and it feels a little bit better, but not great. The weight is still not dropping off. They're still not feeling great. And one of the reasons is they're not doing what it takes nutritionally to support that diagnosis. And I love the medical field, honestly. Like, I come from a science background. I come from a medical background. I love the medical field. I think that there is so many good things happening there, but there's also a lot of doctors who are not addressing the whole complete picture, right? And so a lot of it is not just getting that piece of paper that they hand you and taking the medication. A lot of it is changing a few things so that you're doing everything that you can nutritionally to support the diagnosis. So one of the things that we have to really look at when we're talking about the Nourishment Blueprint for physical, like it's a triangle, for the physical piece of it, is really figuring out what foods work for your body type, considering food sensitivities. If you have a food sensitivity, this is what happens. You ingest that food, and it creates inflammation in your gut. That inflammation, it doesn't just stay in your gut, it extends past that, right? Not only does it going to create inflammation in your gut, so this is like if you get a cut on your arm, it swells up, it's red, it's nasty, it's angry looking, right? That's what's happening on the inside of your body. We just don't see it. And that's what makes this so hard for people to wrap their heads around and for people to get on board with making these changes, because yes, they feel crummy, yes, they feel miserable, but they can't see the damage, right? You can't see cardiovascular damage. All you know is that your heart is pumping and it feels really heavy and you're out of breath. That's all you notice. you can't see the damage. And so that's one of the things that I think is really important, is understanding that this is what's happening on the inside when we're having a food sensitivity. Every single time you eat a food that doesn't work with you, it goes ding, 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 and it creates inflammation, right? It creates damage in the intestines, and it creates inflammation, and that swells up. And what it does is it reduces good bacteria, it increases bad bacteria. Bad bacteria crave foods that are not good for you. Crave foods, and when I say not good for you, I'm not talking like ice cream or pizza or cheeseburgers. I'm talking about foods that don't work for your blueprint. It's going to cause you to crave all the foods that don't work for you, which is really strange and really frustrating. And it's also why you have to figure out how we can approach this, both from the body and mind, right? The body-mind connection. We have to approach it from both directions. We have to heal the body at the same time we're healing the mind. Because here's the thing, if our bodies are biologically craving something, and then on top of it we have our minds that, let's say that we are wired to have certain foods, like let's say we're wired to have ice cream every time we're having an emotional upset. That both of those things have to be addressed for you not to reach for those foods, right? So that's why we go at it from both directions. We go at it from the mind-body connection to heal the physical body. It's also why we have this triangle of physical, psychological, and logistical needs. It's your unique combination, right? So when I say that, the psychological piece of it is all of the messages and the beliefs that you have, like, what's the word? I can't think of the word. Assimilated, right? All of these messages that you have taken in and you have operated under for your entire life. So I was just talking to a client earlier. Some of these messages happen when we're young children, right? We're like, for example, my dad, he's a cop. For 36 years, he's been a cop. Cops are pretty matter of fact. It is, the answer is no, the answer is no. There's no real, things aren't up for negotiation, right? So some of that starts sinking in. Those things that we need, like if we are pressing our needs, right? If we're saying, okay, we're not going to address our needs, we're not going to express our needs, just because you don't express them doesn't mean that all of those negative feelings about not being able to express our needs, that doesn't mean that they just goes away when we push them in. It just means that they go inward and they stay inward, and then we become resentful and we start operating from a space where our needs don't matter, right? All of that from one message that we received as kids, our needs don't matter. That's just dads in general. You're cracking me up, Schneider. That's my husband. That's what's funny. Yes, dads are like that in general. Dads say no, the kids say okay, moms say no, and then the kids start arguing immediately. At least that's how it goes in our house. No, our kids argue with him too. So anyways, it's really, he like totally threw me off. Every time he gets on here, he throws me off. So it's really about figuring out, what works for you and what doesn't. What are you operating out of? What are the messages that you are operating out of? Since I have the attention span of a gnat right now, how many pages are in your blueprint? Since it sounds like there is a lot of amazing information in your blueprint plan. So there are no pages in my blueprint. It's a process that I work on with my clients, but there's a resource guide and there's audios, but there are no, like, I guess what you can say, pages necessarily. It's not a book. I could write a book, I guess, but it's not a book right now. So basically what I do is I walk my clients through the process, and there's a lot of science behind it. There's a little intuition behind it, but basically, and experience, right? I've been doing this for a long time. I know when people tell me I'm experiencing this, 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 and this, I pretty much know what we need to start with and how we need to reset you. So the whole point of a nourishment blueprint process is to allow yourself to reset, heal, and then nourish yourself in a way that works for you. I was expecting, You're expecting a spreadsheet. No, it's not a spreadsheet. There's definitely resources. They have a resource guide. There are pages. There are, different things that help people along the journey. But it's really me working with each person individually to help them understand the Nourishment Blueprint process. This is the thing. I can give people the information. I don't know how successful everyone's going to be because it's a lot to take on and you've never done this before. Hey, Allison. So you've never done this before. So really it's about me helping you figure out where it is. And then I map out like the health and healing plan for every single person. So we have different phases. The first phase is really resetting and healing your body. And then the second phase is really nourishing your body. And then the third phase is allowing yourself to have indulgences in a really mindful way that feels really good to your body. So it is kind of amazing, Pam. And here's the thing. This is why we do this. So when we take out the foods that don't work for our body, when we take out the foods that create inflammation within us, not only are you going to lose the weight, that's a given. There is a direct correlation. If you read the data, if you read the research, there's a direct correlation between increase in inflammation, increased weight gain. It's just flat out direct correlation. But when we are able to reduce the inflammation in our gut, when we're able to allow our gut to heal, when we're able to allow all the good bacteria to thrive and reduce all that bad bacteria that craves all of the nasty stuff that doesn't work for our bodies, the weight will naturally drop off. It is as complex and compelling as your opportunities. Schneider, you cracked me up. Blueprint is a map. It is complex. But here's the thing. It is complex, but it is simple. That's the thing that I think is really crazy. It feels very complex to, I guess, me, the researcher, but I have taken it and distilled it down into really simple, actionable steps. So, and I map it out for everybody. Nobody has to do this themselves. I take the universal blueprint. And this is what the universal blueprint is. It's this plan, I guess you could say, that works for most people, right? That works for most people to allow themselves to heal. And then I take that and I tweak it based on each person's unique blueprint, right? All of the medical conditions that they have, all of the food sensitivity issues that I think that they may have, whether or not your moral stuff ties into that, right? A lot of people, you mean nasties like Diet Coke? No, so here's like nasties means, okay, so for me, a nasty, I guess you could say, I don't know why I said that word, but that would be like gluten or dairy. The reason that it's not good for me, it doesn't fit in my Nourishment Blueprint is number one, I'm lactose intolerant. If I end up having something like that, I will end up in the bathroom, right? Or if I have gluten, it's going to make my stomach hurt so bad and cramp, and I'm going to feel really uncomfortable. So when I say it, I'm saying that in terms of it doesn't work for you. It's not just in general that it's bad for you. Whole grain, whole wheat is something that's good for most people. If you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, I have the antibodies for Hashimoto's. I don't have it. It's not fully, I'm not taking medication or anything like that, but I do have the antibodies for it. So that means I have to be really cautious of that. And one of the things that is correlated with Hashimoto's thyroiditis is gluten. So that's one of the things that doesn't work for my body type. So that's why I say that, if you have something that doesn't work for you, it's a nasty because it makes you go to the bathroom or it makes you miserable or whatever. I gave up dairy, but it hasn't really had a whole lot of effect. Part of the problem might be that I keep forgetting what it has dairy in it. Parmesan cheese, dairy, cheesecake, dairy, ice cream. Yes, Allison. And so here's another thing is, when we give up something, it can take up to 2 weeks for our bodies to be able to fully reset and heal from that exposure. So if you keep accidentally, and it's hard, especially if you're eating out, because sometimes you'll think that something doesn't have it and then it ends up having it. But yeah, if you keep accidentally getting exposure to it, you're never going to get that complete healing, and you're never going to see those results. And it takes about 3 to 5 days for you to completely rid yourself of whatever food is causing that exposure, for you to start feeling better. So that may also be it. I don't have any issues, but there are issues in my family, like my mom is diabetic and has a thyroid condition, so I haven't developed any conditions yet that I know of, but could those things affect my blueprint? Absolutely. Yeah, they can affect your blueprint. So here's the thing. There are certain conditions that you are predisposed for, right? There are certain conditions that run in the family. Hashimoto's thyroiditis is an autoimmune disorder, and it can definitely run in the family, especially women of childbearing age. So sometimes we can go our entire lives and not experience any symptoms, and then after we have a child, children really throw us off. And this is why I work with mamas a lot. But once you have a child, it can throw yourself off hormonally, and all of a sudden, it triggers that autoimmune response, and you start experiencing, thyroid issues. So yes, absolutely. I would definitely take that in consideration, even if it's running in your family, because you're more susceptible to it. Damn kids, I know, right? And here's the thing, Pam, about that Diet Coke. So a lot of people are on the Diet Coke, and the Diet Coke absolutely creates inflammation in your gut because it is full of chemicals that your body does not recognize, and so it does not metabolize in the same way or absorb in the same way that a natural whole food would. Also, Diet Coke is full of artificial sweeteners, right? Artificial sweeteners actually cause you to crave more sugar, because what's happening is your body's like, ooh, that was sweet, but it wasn't really sweet. That's strange. I want real sugar. And so what happens is when we have Diet Coke, it actually causes you to crave and eat more foods that either are full of sugar or turn to sugar. So it's not just like the cheesecake, like Allison had said. It could be the nachos, right? So nachos don't have any sugar in them necessarily, but they turn to sugar. So it could be something like that. So yeah, Diet Coke, that's one of those things that if you aren't seeing all the success that you want to see, try removing that and seeing if that gives you a little bit of a advantage. Also, Diet Coke, if you love the carbonation, and that's really the thing that is driving that craving, I would try substituting it with like a LaCroix. Those are like those sparkling, bubbly drinks that have no artificial sweeteners and no sugar. And they're still super flavorful. My favorite one out of all of them is coconut, but Schneider hates it. Like he says it tastes like he's drinking banana boat skin, like sun lotion. And I'm like, I know, I love that. And he's like, no, that's really disgusting. SodaStream. Yeah. So I don't know if they have anything that you could do like a LaCroix from your SodaStream. I don't know what they have on that. And okay, so here's another thing about, like you were saying, Allison, diabetes. It's not just the genetic component, it's not just the biological component, but it's also the way you grow up, right? So typically families, and this is what's hard to detangle as like a researcher or a scientist, it's hard to see what is biological and what is habitual, right? Because a lot of times we grow up eating with the same eating patterns as our parents. So sometimes it's hard to see what the difference is. Is it an eating pattern that we establish and we have the same eating pattern as our parents? Or is it biological? And like I said, it's hard to detangle that as a researcher or scientist sometimes, but that could definitely be contributing as well. So if your mom, if you grew up seeing her eat a lot of sugars and sweet things, and that was kind of her thing, you could have rightfully fallen in line because that's just how we are, that's just what we do, that kind of thing, right? So some of it is cutting those messages. Like ending those messages, and then rewiring for messages that serve us. And some of it is actual a biological component, and it's figuring out what those are. Put a small amount of OJ or lemonade in your soda stream water. It's very refreshing. Yes. So my daughter hates, my 8-year-old all of a sudden out of nowhere started hating water, and she hasn't been drinking enough, and she hasn't been going to the bathroom enough, and she would hate for me to share that with you. But it's because she hasn't been drinking enough water, and she's like, I hate the taste of water. And we started doing that as well. She loves sparkling water, which is weird, plain sparkling water. So she'll drink that, but we'll also put a splash of orange juice or fresh fruit in there. I love those little clementine oranges that you can put the little sections and you drop them in. That'll last all day. So yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, and my mom and grandma were both kind of bad about eating sugar and just compensating with insulin. Yes. So it's also that mentality of, well, it's not the end of the world because I can just, you know, take a little bit more insulin, which sounds kind of bad, right? But we all have these things. It's like, well, I really want that cheesecake. I would also look at the emotions attached to that, right? So there's typically, especially with sweets, there's an emotional component. There's an emotional association with that food. And we tend to use that in the same emotional experiences. So there's also an emotional component tied to it. And this is why there's the Nourishment Blueprint, because it has all of the components. It has the psychological, the physical, and the logistical needs, and you address them all at the same time, because if you can address them all at the same time, then you can see the results so much better than if you just do the physical, or you just do the mental, or you just do the logistical. Oh, I am with her on that. Which one? Oh, are you talking about Allison? Her comment? Or you don't like the water? Is that what you're saying, Karen? I totally get you on that one. Growing up in California, my mother kept replacing sugar with hard, brown, crunchy, raw sugar. Ugh. Okay, but you know what's really funny about brown sugar? It's not any healthier. It's just brown. Like, it's so funny to me. All it is white sugar with molasses. Like, it's not any healthier, but it does make me laugh. Yeah. I found that as I've done more and more emotional healing, I've eaten so much better and eat so much less sugar. Yes. Yeah, because there is an emotional association with that food. And so a lot of the work that I do with my clients is detangling those emotional associations and then rewiring the brain, and actionable things that we're going to do. Oh, raw sugar, not brown sugar. Yeah, I hear you. No, but see, my mother-in-law, she does this too. She likes brown sugar. And if she's watching this, sorry, Mom. But she does the brown sugar as well. But yeah, it's not any healthier. It's just different. Yes, Pam, I totally got you. Raw sugar. Yeah. But here's the deal. Either way, it's sugar is sugar. And yes, high fructose corn syrup is really not healthy for your body. I would choose regular sugar over that. But either way, it's sugar. You know, whether you have a vegan cupcake or a regular cupcake, either way, it's a cupcake. So also understanding that even if it's these, we have deemed it healthier for some reason, like we put it in our heads that this has to be healthier because it's this or that. If it's still sugar, it's still sugar. It's still going to react in our body the same way. And the thing about sugar specifically, and this is what I think that people forget, when you have an increase in sugar, you have an increase in insulin production, right? Because the insulin needs to break down the sugar. The more sugar that you eat, the harder it is for your body to keep up with that insulin production. At the same time that's happening, your body is becoming more desensitized to that insulin. So it needs even more to do the same function. And so that's what happens when we become insulin resistant. Our bodies cannot keep up with production because we have too much sugar. And then on top of that, the more that it produces, the less that it's actually going to work on the sugar. And that's when we see, and the more insulin that we produce, the higher the weight gain, right? That is a direct correlation as well. So more insulin, more weight gain. Give me fruit rather than a cupcake. Yes, I love fruit. I absolutely love fruit. So that's not a bummer for me. Sorry, Allison. It is. So here's the thing though. you can rewire your brain and actually feel even more satisfied, more satiated with fruit than a piece of cheesecake. And I know that sounds bizarre, but you actually can. It's just about, unraveling all of those messages that we received, disassociating, emotional experiences with food, and then rewiring the brain for you to be able to do that, right? And yes, it does take a little bit of time. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's possible. I know that for me, I used to have a big sweet tooth. I used to eat, this is really disgusting. I used to dip graham crackers into like those tubs of pre-made icing. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like the frosting in the can. And I would eat it like it was, I don't know, like just like a snack. I would eat it all the time. I believe you, I just haven't wanted to, yes. Well, and the reason why, Allison, is because it's doing something for you. That's why. That's why we don't stop it, because it's doing something for us. That's why I used to eat the graham crackers dipped in frosting. And if my mom pops on, she'll attest to this. I would sit with a big thing of frosting and the graham crackers, and I would just eat one after another. I used to do that exam time in college. Yes. So it's doing something for you, and you have to figure out what it's doing for you so that you can unwire and rewire, right? That's the whole point. But so the Nourishment Blueprint process, this is the thing that I really want you guys to understand, is it's a unique combination. So everybody's combination is going to look different, whether it's physical and biological, or whether it's mindset stuff, whether it's emotional stuff, whether it's some of those messages that we received, those limiting beliefs. That's all the psychological components. So if you wanted to, you have like psychological, physical, and logistical. Then within psychological, you have the limiting beliefs, the emotions, and what's the other one? The mindfulness, right? And then in the physical, you have all of those, the biological stuff. And it all has to do with this unique combination of how you show up in your relationship to food. Betty Crocker chocolate fudge frosting. So I'm allergic to chocolate, but so I would do it with vanilla. But yes, exactly. That's exactly what I would do. I would just sit there and eat that because it was doing something for me. Now I don't ever really eat sugar unless it's like a holiday or there's some cake or something that somebody made. But I don't crave sugar. I'm not looking for sugar in the pantry. You know what I mean? Before, it would be like that huge pool. Tub of chocolate chip cookie dough. Anyone? A high school favorite? Oh yeah. I remember in college I had friends that would sit down to like a bowl of it. Like they would serve themselves a bowl like you would ice cream and eat it like that. And that one kind of grossed me out because it's all I could think of was salmonella. Because I was getting my degree in dietetics and I had taken so many food science classes and I was like, ooh, salmonella. But yeah, that one, yes, that's a big one for a lot of people, is cookie dough. And ice cream. So the top three things that I hear about is like the ice cream, the cookies, cookie dough, and then like the cheesecake kind of stuff, right? That really gets people. And the thing about it is, if you have salt, sugar, and fat in one food, that is going to drive the cravings more than if it just had salt and sugar, or if it just had fat and salt, right? It's going to drive the craving even more because you're hitting on all the sensories. It's literally your brain, if you were in an MRI, it's going ding, 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 ding. Iced coffee with syrup. Yeah. So Allison, here's the deal for you. There may be a biological component, but I think that a lot of that is more messaging. A lot of that is more emotional based mindset stuff. I don't think that that's biologically. You're probably also craving it because when we invite sugar in, the more sugar that we have, the more the bad bacteria in our gut wants it. But I don't think that was the driving factor. I think for you, it's a messaging thing that it just needs to unwire and then rewire for something that serves you, especially because you have that, like you mentioned, like your family is like that as well. So I think that was just the messages that you received. And if you can detangle some of that, then you're going to see a huge shift, like big shift. And that's the thing is, when we can shift that, we start feeling so much better. And quicker than we think we do. So a lot of times when I do like a reset in my Nourishment Blueprint stuff, if we do a reset on somebody, which everybody does in the very beginning, it takes about 3 to 5 days, and all of a sudden they start feeling amazing, right? The first 3 days feels a little crummy because your body is, you know, detoxing and purging, and all of this stuff is happening, and you don't feel so good. But after about 3 to 5 days, you feel amazing. Today was Pilates or Pure Barre day 4 for me. The first 3 days felt horrible, like could not move. Every time I laughed, I hurt. Like I felt miserable. This is day 4, and I woke up feeling amazing. And it reminded me that this is exactly how my clients feel on day 4. Day 4, you feel great. You get through all that sluggish period, you get through that reset period, and you start really feeling amazing. And once you can get to figure out which foods work for you, which foods don't, you just continue that. When I started running, my diet changed completely, so I craving protein a lot. Yes, and this is what's awesome about the human body is that it's very smart. Once you start running, your nutritional requirements change, your blueprint changes. What you need to support and nourish your body changes, and your body, you know, changes that as well. It says, hey, I need some more protein. So yeah, that's awesome. A lot of times, especially because I work with women, a lot of times where you are in your cycle will also define what your body is asking for. So if you are right before ovulation, sometimes bodies crave a little bit of sugar. And that's okay. A lot of times if you can track it, then you can understand that, like, oh, I'm just ovulating, that's it. I actually know when I am, so that helps. I can feel it happening. So I know that if I'm craving something sweet, it's just that hormonal flux, and then I'm able to separate myself from that craving a little bit. A lot of people right before their cycle, they'll experience that, right? And then when you're on your cycle, you actually burn 400 to 500 more calories a day because of all the extra processes going on. So you're going to be hungrier. So some of this is biologically driven as a woman, and you're going to be craving things that you need. A lot of people right before their cycle, they'll crave protein, or they'll crave things that are iron rich, right? I always crave steak. Like my body needs extra iron, I guess. One of my friends on here, Stacy, who's not on today, she craves fish. You know, that's like her thing, and she needs a little bit more omega-3 during that time period. Yeah, I gave up sugar for a week once, and it sucked. And then we went to a function, there was only sugary stuff and chips, so game over. See, Allison, this is the thing. We can give things up for a finite period of time, but the reason that it did not work for you is because you were trying to give it up physically, and your thing is not that. It's mindset. Yours is all emotional, I can guarantee you. So that's why it sucked the whole time. And that's why it was like game over the moment that you saw it, because yeah, there was things that you had to address differently. And yours is emotional, I can almost guarantee you, just by having that conversation today. So yeah, I would really look at some of those emotional experiences that you have associated with those foods, and then start untangling it. But yeah, this is the kind of stuff that we do in Nourishment Blueprint. This is part of my Nourishment Blueprint process. So Nourish Life, it's a program. It's my brand new program. It's 9 months long. And the reason it's 9 months long, I talked to somebody the other day and they're like, that's a long program. But the reason it's 9 months long is because it gives you enough time to allow for transformation. If you have 40, 50, 60 pounds to lose, you're not going to lose it in 3 months like you would in my Nourishment Blueprint process. Now, that's not to say I've had somebody who's gone through Nourishment Blueprint, right? She has transitioned out on her own. She did fabulous. She lost 54 pounds. It's not to say you can't, but if you want more support during that time period of when you're losing, the 9 months is really enough time for you to have that support, have that accountability, and be able to lose that while you're with others, while you're with this sisterhood of women. So it's 9 months, and the best part, or not the best part, but one of the great parts of it is that I'm going to give you my Nourishment Blueprint program absolutely free. So you're going to get that just when you sign up. You'll get instant access. It's already in the membership site. So if you signed up today, April 5th, you have 1 month until Nourish Life starts, right? You can theoretically start Nourishment Blueprint today. You can do your game plan call with me where we map everything out. You can do all of that today. And then you would have a month of transformation before Nourish Life even starts. This is going to get you through the entire summer. This is going to get you through all of the holidays. It ends at the end of January. So this is going to get you all the way into, February 1 of 2019, so that you are feeling amazing come the new year. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, there's also going to be guest experts. I have an extraordinary group of friends who have volunteered to offer their healing modalities, and they're going to offer healing every month on top of all of the work that we're going to do. So each week you're going to get a video, you're going to get nourishment practices. We're going to be working on your Nourishment Blueprint, healing your relationship to food, working on self-love and self-care, and really building you up. This program is all about raising women up. I don't think that there's enough of that out there. So there's a sisterhood of women who will be raising up another sisterhood of women. And I find that really extraordinary and beautiful. So if that's something that you want to do, get on my calendar. Spots are filling up. So, and they're limited because I like to keep things smaller, and I like to give a lot of myself to my clients. So I want to make sure that there's enough of me to go around. And so I'm limiting that. So if that's something that you want to do, please let me know. I'll get you the details, but we have to chat first because I want to make sure that this is a right fit. It is 9 months, and it is a sisterhood of women. So I want to make sure that this is something that's really going to benefit you, and that this, lovely group of women. So if this is something you want to do, let me know. PM me or go to nourishyourlife.org/apply. So I'll put that in here. nourishyourlife.org/apply. Let's see if I can type while I talk. See if that works. Yay, we're in business. Okay, so if that's something that you want to do for the next 9 months with me, fill out the form, get on my calendar so that we can chat, and we'll talk then. So if you guys don't have any more questions, I hope you have a fantastic day. I am going to run to the school. I'm going to go to my kids' school, then I'm going to eat, and then I'm going to do my coaching call at 12:30. So wish me luck, because that's 30 minutes to do all those things. Anyways, I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, guys.